In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, amen.
Hello, beautiful friends. I'm Natalie.
And I'm Claudine.
And welcome to Shokran Very Much, the podcast. This week we're talking about dating in the Coptic Church.
Happy Monday, everyone. We're doing something a bit different for today's episode. First of all of our questions today were sent in by you, so this episode is completely by you and for you, which is what our podcast was intended to be from the beginning. On top of that, we have not one, but two guests in our episode today. An amazing couple who have been together for 12 and a half years and have been married for 10 of those. We are joined today by Father Kyrillos fam and Deena fam. How are you guys?
Good. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us. We're happy to be here with you guys.
Thank you for coming. Okay, so we usually start our episodes off with an icebreaker, but since there are two of you today, we're going to do it like a joint icebreaker. So How did you two meet?
I was born in Washington State, and I moved out to California in high school in the middle of my junior year to St. Marina. That was the church that the closest church and the church that we started going to. And Deena had been at St. Marina since it started, and we're less than a year apart, but both in high school at the time. And that's when and where we met.
That's nice.
That's so cute.
That's so cute.
So how long were you guys friends before you guys actually started dating?
Friends. Okay, so we were friends in high school. Like, we were good friends, like, since I was 15. He was, you were I was 16, or you were 16, I was 15.
Mm-hmm.
And then up until I was 22, you were 23, right?
I think so.
Yeah, because that summer. I always include the summer. I know you don't include the summer leading up to December.
This isn't going to make sense to anybody who's listening.
Yeah, whatever. I think that, so like summer 2010, even though like we started dating December 2010, I think that summer
I just turned
was
23.
like,
that's right.
That was kind of like the, like we were still friends, but like it was like
there was like a thing going on.
It was, well, no, it wasn't a thing. We call it our awkward phase.
So when we first became friends, and up until that point, basically those 7 years or ish, we like never had like any awkward moments in our friendship. And actually, like I don't know if you could, however you would describe a friendship with somebody where like you just really like
you vibe.
You vibe. So any jokes. You know that person is going to get it. That person gets your sense of humor. That person can pick up on your mood. But we weren't like particularly close to the point where we ever hung out just alone. Ever. Mm-hmm. But we had the same circle of friends at church. Always did things as a group. Again, never had any like anything less than positive in terms of our interaction with each other. Yeah. And definitely had a lot of respect for the other person, and saw really, really good things in the other person.
Like what? Like what?
No, like
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
Like when you kind of pick up that this person has the same values I do.
Yeah.
This person comes from a family that I would also, the way I would describe this person's family is the way I would also describe my own family, or close family friends, that sort of thing.
This is just a random, like, on-the-spot question. Would you have been able to guess when you were younger that you guys would have ended up together?
No, I'll answer that because I remember.
That was really fast.
I was going to say no, just for the record.
But no, I jumped to that because I remember before. So we're getting to this, but before we basically started to take that turn and that positive turn.
Awkward face.
Before we started to move in that direction in our relationship, I remember somebody asking, "Hey, I feel like you guys would be like really good." Like, actually, it wasn't even like that. It was like, "Hey, are you like dating anybody yet? Is there a girl in your life?" I remember being like, "No way. Like, what are you talking about?" And then that person was like, who I think would be really good for you and you for that person is Deena. And I remember being like, what the heck? Like, because I never thought about her in that way at all. And so that was shortly before what Deena was going to. But basically, can I just say it?
Yeah.
So like, particularly my birthday that one year, like none of my friends remembered it. And I just remember being like, just, you know, like a typical guy, like trying not to let it bother me and just not really saying anything.
Yeah.
He's also not a big birthday guy.
So
I'm gonna throw that in there.
But Deena remembers everybody's birthday, even people she doesn't like. So she just remembers everybody's birthday, and she'll text people, you know, that she didn't talk to in person, like for like 10 years or something. But you'll still see her texting that person every single year because she knows it's that person's birthday. She's not shy to do that. And so she was, you know, texting me happy birthday, and I just kind of like vented. You know, I was like, hey, I know this is dumb. But like, I don't know. Is it bad that I just kind of, like, I'm kind of whatever hurt, whatever I said, you know, bothered that none of my friends remembered my birthday. And then she took me out to, like, you know, just random. It was during the Siam. It was my birthday is on July 3rd, so it's always during the.
Oh, happy late birthday!
Thanks.
Yeah.
So she took me out to a sushi place, Sushi Plantation in Mission Viejo. Whatever, it was just me and her, and it was just a friends thing. But then for the rest of that year, that was in July, for like the rest of that year, we just really, like, for whatever reason, started to, like, if we hung out with friends, we would kind of get there a little early before everybody, or it happened like at some point where I started to like pick her up and we would just carpool together, even though it was totally out of the way for me. And it sort of developed into that. When I would see her at church, you know, I would be like, wow, like Deena looks really pretty. Like, like, and I never noticed that before, you know, like I just never, you know, because I always, you know, looked at somebody who's a friend and you don't think of a friend, you know, like you don't notice, you know, like when that person is wearing like a different dress, or, you know, when, you know, they did their hair versus the last time you saw them. And so it basically went in that direction, and then it was just a matter of, okay, who is willing to actually, you know, confess to the other person that they are having these feelings. Because I think we both, I know we both, and we admitted this to each other later, that we both had a fear of, if we admitted that to the other person, then that would have a permanent effect on our otherwise pristine, you know, friendship. And basically, like around Christmas that year, we spilled the beans over the phone. And this was, we had already started, you know, talking on the phone late at night for, you know, like hours at a time, but just nobody's you know, strong enough to really say to the other person, hey, I gotta tell you something. I did try to say it once when we were doing Taco Tuesday with friends, which was a thing that we were doing. There's a place called Fred's in Dana Point, I think.
Shout out to Fred.
Shout out to, R.I.P. Fred's. The place isn't open, split. Hasn't been open for a while. And that was, you know, like kind of like a fun thing, you know, every Tuesday with our friends. We were all in college. I had just graduated. She had just graduated. I was finishing up. She's younger than me, but I still finished after her because she's really smart. And I remember once, before our friends got there at Taco Tuesday, the chips are out, the salsa's out. And I looked down and I was like, and I looked up and I was like, hey. And then she had a chip halfway in her mouth, didn't take a bite yet, and she was like, and her mouth was wide open, her eyes were wide open, she was looking left and right, trying to like react. And then I was like,
I think you said,
what do you think of that salsa? What did I say?
You were like, I'm so glad you're my friend, or something like that.
I had to say something meaningful, but like not what I wanted to say.
I really love you as a friend.
I didn't say
he didn't say that.
No, whatever.
No, you said something like it was clear that you were about to say something. And
I saw it on her face. I was like, oh man, I just gave it all away. And then, you know, when somebody reacts that way, you're like, okay, they're not going to reciprocate. Even if they want to, they're not ready to. So I obviously made something up. And that was probably like a couple months before we actually ended up telling each other. And then when we told each other, I'll say it from my perspective, but I think you would agree anyways. When we told each other, I felt like I understood, because I've known her for so long and because of how steady this progression was. I like understood, because all I wanted was not to try it out. You know, I had known her for a long time.
Yeah.
And we both had the same relationship with our church. The same relationship with God. We had the same objective in mind with respect to that. And so I knew when I told her how I felt, and that she also said that she felt that same way, that there was no question. There are very few things in my mind, or in life, in my mind, where I could say, like, I had no question about this. But I had no question that we both had, marriage as our goal, and doing it the right way with the fear of God, then. And so there are other questions here that I think this will lead into, but that was kind of my perspective on answering that question. Did I say anything that you wouldn't say?
No.
Is there? Do you want to add? What do you want to add?
No, I do remember that conversation, that December conversation, and that led to like him asking me out.
If you want to answer it now, one of the guys asked who made the first move.
I kind of forced him.
I definitely in that conversation. I mean, it
was kind of forced though, like because I was waiting for it.
Yeah, that's right.
Like
I was like, I want to tell you something, and it was really hard.
Yeah, and I was like, just tell me.
When we talk at the same time, is it picking up?
Yeah.
It's not like one person is.
No. You can hear both of you.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, you were like, I want to tell you something. I'm like, just say it. Just say what you want to say.
Yeah, man, that was really annoying. And she was like, she kept on, I'm like, I want to tell you something.
I was like, okay, go ahead. Sure, I'm listening.
I was like, this is really hard. And I think I must have like taken like a couple minutes of just like, just
like when Abouna processes, he usually will just kind of like elongate and like his
just
thought,
say a bunch
just
of
like
and stuff like that,
and then kind of do one of those. I'm like, just say it. I'm here. I'm listening. I'm listening.
Yeah, and for me, one of the things that made it hard is because when you say like, just say it. I'm here for you. You take that risk of like saying how you feel, and the other person being like, hey, I understand that you feel that way, and I'm sorry if you misunderstood things. It's not you, it's me. Stuff
then
like that.
I basically made him say like, I like you.
Yeah.
And then he goes like, I was like, and I like you too. And he's like, I like you a lot. And I'm like, I like you a lot.
So that's right.
Like
when I first admitted it, I had to be really conservative.
Yeah.
And just kind of minimize it a little bit of like what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
Just to reduce the risk of her not feeling the same way. So I said something like kind of basically, I kind of like, and then she's like, I like it, and then I was like, well, I really like it.
And then I was like repeating everything back to you. I remember being like, well, I really like you.
Yeah.
But I think that was like the beginning of it. So that was who made the first move. But then I also remember in that same conversation, I was like, I'm just nervous. I don't want this to like hurt our friendship. Like we vocalized that to each other. And we kind of like put it out there that was something that was really important, that we're not like, we were like, okay, this is basically like for essentially like marriage. I really like you. I don't want to hurt our friendship. Like you have to promise me we're going to be friends. Like we kind of like said stuff like that, like in that same conversation. And then I was like, so does this mean we're boyfriend and girlfriend? No.
I think we hung up the phone. This is maybe like 4:00 in the morning or something like that.
Yeah, this was our longest conversation.
And then like I think I called back or texted, and I was like, hey, so does that mean like we're like going out? Yeah.
I think and he only had like a 300 text allotment.
Yeah, this
for
was
the
back,
whole month.
This was if anybody's our age, you'll remember when T-Mobile had their Fave Fives. This is like this telephone plan where you could pick 5 people where I think like you have like unlimited minutes with. Definitely not unlimited text. But she was one of my fave fives, let me tell you that.
Still a fave five.
And I definitely went over my text limits every single month. And
yeah, I definitely got in trouble by my dad.
My dad wasn't too happy.
Both of our dads. Deena.
Okay, so there are 2 groups of questions today. A group asked by girls and a group asked by boys. How it's going to work is we're going to want both of you to answer the questions by girls and boys, because a lot of them wanted to hear what, like, the boys who asked questions wanted to hear what a married man would say, and then also wanted to hear the girls' perspective on things, and the same situation for the girls, but vice versa. So let's just get right into it.
So, what do you think is, like, the appropriate age to start dating? Because I think now, especially with, like, the culture here in America, it's pretty, like, it's okay for us to date as teenagers. So what do you think is, like, the appropriate age to begin?
You know, when we were growing up, I think that was also a question that I had, along with all the girls my age, and I'm sure all the boys. So I, you know, as much as the culture is changing, I think this has been a hot topic for a very long time of what's acceptable. I think in the dating world, the purpose is important. So if the purpose is to get to know somebody on a more intimate level, and the goal is essentially marriage or something like that, I think that's very different than saying, I just want to date, or I just want to date to fit in, or I just want to date to not be single. So I don't know that there's an age that I would say, hey, it's okay to start dating. I think it's where you are in your life and the purpose. I don't know if you have additional thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I get this question by people, like either in confession or whatever, it's hard for me to think of it in terms of age, because everybody's different. Guys are different, girls are different than guys. And when you say culture, you know, I think of, you know, like our parents' generation, maybe a generation before that, you know, it was common for them to get married at really young ages. But I think it boils down to, when does your life start to slow down? And when do you, when do your needs stop changing? You know, or the things that you're looking for in your life, or the different stages that you're moving on toward, when do they stop changing? Because the big thing as you're going through college is your mind is constantly changing. The way you look at life is constantly changing. Your views on the world, what you want to do with your life. You know, I felt like my career inside my head was constantly changing, like every few months, even if it wasn't in the system, you know, changing. But in my mind, I was constantly reevaluating what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And so that's a perfect example of things changing. And when you're in that state, you don't really know what you want. And then when you bring in, you know, fear and commitments, you know, that's another factor that when you throw that in the mix, that makes things more complicated. And so guys, I think, react differently when they're facing that than girls do. Should we pause?
Sure.
So I guess basically just to sum up my response to that, you know, I think of it less in terms of a number of your age, and more so your situation in life, and when you're, you know, finishing up, you know, somebody who's about to get into some kind of postgraduate school might be very stressed about that, very fearful that anything might get in the way of them succeeding in terms of their grades and you know, their exams and all that. and they wouldn't want anything serious to get in the way of that, and they might be fearful of entering into a relationship, and that would impact any current relationships as they're transitioning into that. Just using that as an example. And so for, one person, 23 might be a great age because, for example, their career, in using that example, but maybe a terrible age for somebody else that same age, given even like a perfect relationship otherwise. But like I'm saying, it may not be good for somebody else. So I really start to think of it as, when does your life and the other person's life really start to slow down, where you can now reduce all of those things that are constantly shifting in terms of your ambitions and objectives.
Okay, well, what I was gonna say, because you were talking about dating, you said college and stuff like that. What are your thoughts on like dating in high school?
The problem with starting a relationship at a young age is the relationship is just very tumultuous. You have two people who don't really, it's hard for them to trust the other person. And that just creates a lot of paranoia. One person, might be hanging out with certain people, and then the other person is like, why are you hanging out with that person? I don't want you hanging out with that person. And that sort of paranoia and lack of trust just is not good for the relationship. So, that's typical at, I have kids asking me who are in junior high, like, hey, I really like this girl, and I feel bad kind of telling them it's not going to work out. And when I feel too bad to say that, sometimes I just, I don't say much because I know that they're going to see for themselves the challenges. So, that's kind of the thing, like, at an early age, like, what other freedoms do you have in your life where you're in high school? You don't have very much. You can get a part-time job, but you can't, get your own place to live. You could drive, but, you can't drink. Like, I'm just thinking of our society, the stuff that's legal for you to do and the stuff that's typical. You could move into a dorm at the college that you go to or whatever. You could, if you're going to college, you could live close to campus or on campus or whatever. But then that comes with its own set of challenges with trying to keep a healthy relationship with one, person. Yeah. So, you're really up against a whole lot of challenges. It's really ambitious to start at a young age. And if we're being honest, there's always that risk of taking things too far in your relationship that either you regret or in the moment, or at that stage in your life, or down the road you might regret. And so there's a lot of risk, and then there's a lot of just the odds are stacked against you in terms of the relationship actually going the distance, actually going to where you want it to go.
Yeah, I agree. I think it goes back to the emotional instability. Like, you're still trying to figure out who you are. In junior high and high school, you have a very new understanding of identity. And then in college, you have a different understanding of identity. And then once you're out of college, you start kind of being a little bit more stable in terms of understanding who you are and what your needs are. But through all those stages, you're changing constantly. Your needs are changing. What you're attracted to changes. What your goals are and all that changes constantly. So then it ends up being that you are having this hard time kind of like navigating, like, do I commit myself to this person and just like stay with this person for that long of a like period? Like, I know people who started dating in early high school, maybe late junior high, something like that, and by the time they got to like college or maybe even post college, because this person didn't finish college or wasn't as ambitious as me, now I don't know that I can be with you, right? But then you're already invested, you've invested all that time. So then now you feel like you're betraying the person, right? There's a lot of different emotions and a lot of, I just feel like it's kind of like a downhill like spiral that you can kind of go into. And I think it goes back to just not being emotionally stable, and understanding who you are and what your needs are and the goal that you have in your life, what's important and what's a priority. So
Yeah. So I forgot to mention, like, the questions we're asking right now were sent in by girls. Just a fun fact, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Do you know what courting is?
I saw that. I wasn't sure. Is it different than dating? Oh no, the
That's
dating,
actually one of the questions. Somebody was like, "What is the
dating
difference?"
and courting.
Yeah.
Is that like?
I think courting, like in the old days, I could be totally wrong. It was like
maybe
when you are like kind of like in an engaged.
Yeah,
like,
maybe where it's understood that you're not just getting to know each other through like an early stage of the relationship, aka dating.
Then
and
then the question makes
Yeah.
sense.
maybe it's like, okay, we both now have this objective in mind of wanting to take this to marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if we could do that together and see if it works out. Maybe.
Yeah. Okay. So another person was asking, I hear about dating all the time at school, on social media, at church, etc. But whenever I discuss it with my parents or older servants, they tell me that all of that isn't realistic compared to what actually happens. So what is dating really?
So
What is dating really? I think in this person's experience, this might be a hard one. As a kid, when you're talking to, or whatever, a young adult, when you're talking to your parents or older servants about dating, their perception of dating is purely getting to know someone for the purpose of marriage. That's their perception of what dating is. So when we see on social media or here at school or here at church or wherever you're hearing other perceptions of dating, you are kind of exposing yourself to what society claims dating is, which is getting to know somebody, having a relationship, falling in love, all those like kind of cliche statements or thoughts. And so when you bring that concept to people who believe and have kind of just lived through their own dating experience as we dated to get married because that was the end goal. They were really serious about that situation, and that's how they got to know each other, and got to know the other person's family and friends, etc. That's very different than what social media, our friends at school, our friends at church, whatever, share. They're just really interested in the fact that you're getting to know somebody and you can hold their hand in public and, kind of like what Abouna was saying earlier, like take it to the next level or whatever it might be. It's a very kind of like superficial, in my opinion, like surface level getting to know you versus like this deep bond that you're trying to create, like what you do when you truly date for the purpose of marriage, which is again what older servants, what parents might have experienced or might have the perception of. I don't know if that totally makes sense. In my mind, it makes sense.
yeah, I have something to add. So I think if I could try to take a guess at what that person is saying about, my parents are saying it's not realistic, referring to what they see around them, like on social media or their friends or whatever is happening around them or whatever they see. I think people, when they enter into some kind of romantic relationship, I'm using these big words, but basically they just start going out with somebody or seeing somebody or hooking up or whatever people would want to call it. I think for people typically, especially people who are outside of the church, and unfortunately, I think they look at this kind of relationship as, how could this relationship help me be happy in life? And so the stuff that should take place when they are culminating the relationship such as sex, happens kind of at the beginning or early on. And I think it's typically viewed as like, this isn't really the most important thing to me, but I really want to enjoy it with this person. If I enjoy it with this person, that's a good thing. That's a good sign of this relationship. Now let's move on to the next thing. And they hope that their relationship gets to the point where they're starting to knock things off of their bucket list. You know, happy job, happy career, home, success in this, you know, traveling, liking all the same stuff. Everything I do, I enjoy it with the other person, kids, happy kids, all that stuff. Whereas for us Christians, you know, Orthodox Christians, it's not in that order. And so, in fact, we actually culminate in a union that takes place in the church, and not that it's, you know, kind of like a worthless thing. So if you look at it in that way, I can kind of start to make sense with that question of it's not realistic. Because if you go through that relationship process in that order, of course it's not going to be realistic if you have the objective of being one flesh with that person in the church, in the body of Christ.
That was a good answer.
Yeah. This episode has to be by far one of our favorites, and we hope you'll be as excited as us to know there's so much more left to hear and enjoy. So make sure you tune in next week for part 2 of Dating in the Church with Father Kyrillos fam and Deena fam on Shokran Very Much, the podcast. We'll see you next week.